who will pick up Jeb Bush's supporters now that he is out? And furthermore, his super PAC money. Joining me right now to talk more about this is Matt Schlapp. He is chairman of the American Conservative Union, and Rachel Campos-Duffy. She is national spokesperson for the Libre Initiative. I believe she's on the phone with us. So Matt, let me begin with you. You've been talking to some Jeb Bush supporters today. Are they already deciding who they will throw their support behind?
Well, first of all, Fredricka, they're sad. You know, their candidate is out of the race, and they've put their heart and soul into this, and that's always a tough moment in politics. I think most of them are trying to consider what to do. He has a lot of big donors from Texas who I think it is inevitable that many will move to Ted Cruz. He has a lot of supporters in Florida, some of whom like Marco and will move to Marco. Others are still pretty upset with Marco for challenging Jeb. Florida folks really thought this was Jeb's time to run. And so I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think we have to give it some time. And remember, Jeb's son is a statewide elected official in Texas, which has implications to what he does with Ted Cruz in the future. So it's a very interesting question.
Oh, my gosh, that really is something. And then there's, of course, all that big donor money that would traditionally have gone to Jeb Bush. One has to wonder if it will automatically go to a Marco Rubio, or if those donors are having a difficult time knowing the kind of strained relationship that that was on display.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And basically, what I've learned about most donors is they like to go with a winner. And one of the reasons why Jeb Bush had so many of these donors is he was the front runner. He was the guy he was supposed to win. And so a lot of these donors are going to take a breath, and they're going to want to pick a winning candidate as they make their next decision.
Because some had already conveyed that they would go for like a Marco Rubio if he were kind of the second runner-up, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. That most people assume that more of the establishment money will go to Marco, and Marco will be seen as this establishment candidate. But because Marco and Jeb hail from the same state, look for the Florida donors to have a more fitful decision on this. The Texas donors will actually go through this as well. The New York donors and the Northeast donors, I really believe almost all of them go to Marco, maybe some to Kasich.
All right. And Rachel, now we get to see you. I'm glad you're able to join us here. Okay, so what do you see, in that crystal ball? That was a very tenuous display between what was once mentor and mentee, Jeb and Marco. How soon before you even see Jeb Bush making a decision about who he would support, if anyone?
I'm not sure, but I think one thing that's really obvious to me is that I don't think that the animosity that you're describing between maybe how Jeb feels about Marco really goes towards the donors. I think a lot of people who like Marco were torn between Marco and Jeb, whether it was people who were working for that campaign. They had to make a decision early on. Do I go with Marco? Do I go with Jeb? And even some of the voters. I think that it's very clear to me that so many of these voters are going to go to Marco, and so many of these donors are also going to go to Marco. If you were an absolute, blow the system up, you were already in the Trump camp. I mean, I think that Marco is pretty much the establishment next choice. Well, but isn't Marco, Rubio even already trying to change his dialogue a little bit, as if he is trying to distance himself from the establishment? Just listening to his, talk this morning and even last night after that second runner-up, win in South Carolina, Rachel. Yeah, but one of the things that was so interesting to me was the way he positioned it. He had Tim Scott behind him. He had Nikki Haley. I think he's really, I think it's a really attractive thing to see this new face of the Republican Party, and even donors, and I think a lot of voters are excited that finally, look, the Republicans had the most diverse multicultural field of presidential candidates in the history of the United States, and they often don't get credit for that. And I think that Marco put that face forward in a very clear way, that this was going to be a new way of looking at the Republican Party, one that actually reflected the people that are coming up in the party. I think that's very attractive to voters and to donors. That's something that no other ticket has.
Okay, and while it may be a little early for everyone to kind of, see who the Bush supporters will, soon be backing, Matt, I wonder if, now we can kind of look back, a little evaluation of Jeb Bush and what happened when he was supposed to be, or at least there were high expectations that he was going, to potentially win that nomination. Take a look at just this quick reel of Jeb Bush on the campaign trail.
So 40 years ago, I smoked marijuana, and I admit it. I'm sure that other people might have done it and may not want to say it in front of 25 million people. My mom's not happy that I just did.
My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should be running.
Not about.
You find a Democrat that's for cutting taxes, cutting spending $10, I'll give him a warm kiss.
Let me show you something. The party that I believe in.
Get back in the business of creating a more peaceful world. Please clap.
Okay, these were memorable moments, but
yes,
maybe they also kind of highlight there were a few awkward moments too. So how do you evaluate what happened with Jeb Bush? How do you kind of evaluate his demeanor even?
Well, I would say this. I think this is not a cycle where the endorsements of elected officials or all the same old names is going to make an impact. What people are looking for is an individual. And what Republicans and conservatives want to see is characteristics. They want to see strength. They want to see resolve. They want to see independence. Someone who will take on Washington. And that's why the individual characteristics are trumping everything else. I think Jeb Bush and his campaign fundamentally whiffed on what is the political moment in 2016. And that 2016 moment is so much different from what we've seen in previous presidential cycles. And they ran a campaign like the previous presidential cycles, and they didn't run the campaign that would win in this year.
And Rachel, looking at that video, going to strike any notes for you as to what happened as you evaluate?
It's painful to watch, but I think what it really shows is that Jeb Bush was always a donor class creation of a candidate. I don't live in Washington, D.C. I live in Wausau, Wisconsin, so I'm very close to, I think, what the average, everyday Republican primary voter looks like and thinks about. And I think that there was never an appetite for Jeb Bush from the beginning. It was the idea was that it sounded good on paper, it looked good in a big playbook that they put together, and they thought they could just really raise a lot of money and create an appetite for it. I think the good news for America, sadly for Jeb Bush, is that this proves that money does not buy elections. He had more money than God, and he could not convince more than 6% of whatever primary he was in to vote for him. So I think in a sense, we can all be happy that, elections cannot be bought in the United States. There really is the voice of the people that has to be listened to. And I would say from the beginning, there never was on the ground, in the base, in the grassroots, an appetite for a Jeb Bush campaign.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. Rachel Campos-Duffy, Matt Schlapp, thanks so much to both of you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.